Grace has a great idea, and she's been sitting on it for days. Today at Tech Global, a deadline crunch where nobody wants to cut corners, a coffee shop chat about escaping the rat race and the weight of the world on your shoulders, and a pitch so persuasive it could sell ice to a polar bear. By the end, Grace learns she's no small cog in a big machine. 6 idioms, 1 big day at the office. Let's get unstuck.
Hey Grace, you've been quiet in stand-ups this week. Everything okay with the Kestrel pitch?
Actually, I've had this idea since Tuesday, but I keep sitting on it. I didn't want to sound like I was overstepping.
Sitting on an idea for 4 days? Grace, that's exactly the kind of thing Maya wants to hear before Friday, not after.
I guess I was worried it might sound too simple. What if it's not thought through enough?
The only bad idea is one nobody hears. Walk me through it right now.
Okay. What if we let the client demo the dashboard themselves during the pitch, instead of us just presenting slides at them?
That's good. That's really good. See, if you'd sat on that until the client meeting, we'd have lost the chance to build it properly first.
Speaking of building it properly, I wonder if Maya would be okay with us skipping the accessibility pass to save a couple of days.
Absolutely not. We are not cutting corners on this pitch, not with a client this size. 2 days now saves us a rework headache later.
So how do we hit Friday without cutting corners anywhere?
We prioritize. Your live demo idea probably saves us more time than the accessibility pass costs us. That's the trade good teams make instead of corner cutting.
Got it. I'll stop sitting on ideas and start blurting them out at you instead.
Deal. Let's go tell Maya.
Let's pause on the phrase, sit on an idea, to know about a good idea or piece of useful information, but delay sharing it or acting on it, usually out of hesitation or caution. The image comes from poultry farming. A hen sits on her eggs, keeping them warm and hidden until they're ready to hatch. By the early 20th century, English speakers borrowed that picture for someone holding on to information rather than letting it hatch into action. Don't confuse it with sit on the fence, undecided between 2 options. Sit on an idea isn't about indecision. You already know what you think, you're just not sharing it yet. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. I've had this idea since Tuesday, but I keep sitting on it. The editor sat on my manuscript for 6 months before finally sending notes. Don't sit on the survey results. The marketing team needs them today. Let's pause on the phrase, cut corners. To do something in the easiest, cheapest, or fastest way, skipping steps that should properly be done, usually sacrificing quality or safety to save time. It comes from horse racing and driving, literally cutting across the corner of a track or road instead of following the longer, correct curve in order to save distance. By the late 1800s, people applied it figuratively to shortcuts in any kind of work. It's almost always critical. People rarely say they're proud of cutting corners. It's usually paired with on. Cut corners on safety, on quality, on testing. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. We are not cutting corners on this pitch, not with a client this size. The contractor cut corners on the wiring, and it cost the homeowner twice as much to fix later. Please don't cut corners on the testing phase just because we're behind schedule.
Long week, huh? You did great work today. That dashboard idea of yours saved us a ton of time.
Thanks. Honestly, I've barely stopped since Monday. Sometimes I look around the office and it feels like everyone's just running in place.
Kah, welcome to the rat race. Everyone's sprinting, and nobody quite catching up to the finish line.
Does it ever slow down?
It can, if you build the right habits early. When I was your age, I let the rat race convince me I had to say yes to everything.
What changed?
I realized pacing myself wasn't slowing down, it was playing the long game. I started saying no to fire drills that weren't actually urgent.
That's fair. Some nights I go home feeling like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like if I don't fix everything myself, it'll all fall apart.
I hear you. But you're one person on a 5-person team, Grace. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone. That's what the rest of us are there for.
It's easier to forget that at 9 at night with 3 tabs still open.
Which is exactly why we're having coffee and not looking at Slack right now. Build the good habits, protect your evenings, and the rat race stops running you.
Pace myself now so I'm not still sprinting in 10 years.
Now you're getting it.
Let's pause on the phrase, the rat race. An exhausting, repetitive competition. Especially the daily grind of working hard just to keep up, without ever really getting ahead. The picture comes from laboratory rats running inside a wheel or maze, expending huge effort while going nowhere. The phrase caught on in the mid-20th century as a metaphor for commuting, competing, and grinding without real progress. It's usually about life or career in general, not one specific company or boss. Saying, "My company is a rat race," sounds like you're blaming your employer. The rat race is bigger than that. It's modern life itself. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. Welcome to the rat race. Everyone's sprinting, and nobody quite catching up to the finish line. After years in the rat race, she finally left the city to open a small bakery. He says building passive income is his way out of the rat race. Let's pause on the phrase, weight of the world on your shoulders. To feel completely overwhelmed, as though you personally are responsible for carrying every problem or burden around you. The image comes from Greek mythology. The Titan Atlas was condemned to hold up the sky, often depicted as the globe itself, on his shoulders for eternity. English borrowed that picture as a vivid way to describe crushing personal responsibility. It naturally pairs with carries or have, carrying or having the weight of the world on your shoulders. Use it for emotional overwhelm, not physical tiredness. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. Some nights I go home feeling like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. After his father passed, he felt like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, running the family business alone. You don't have to carry the weight of the world. Ask your teammates for help.
Come in, sit down, everyone. I just got off the phone with Northwind Client Ops. They signed the 3-year renewal.
That's fantastic news, Victor. This was the account we were most worried about losing this quarter.
Worried is right. Their VP told me flat out last month he was ready to walk, and then your team turned him around completely.
Grace ran point on the demo. She's the one who convinced him.
Grace, from what I heard, that client walked in ready to cancel and walked out asking for a second contract. You could sell ice to a polar bear.
I just showed him the dashboard we've been building, the one where he could watch his own data update live instead of taking our word for it.
That live demo idea was Grace's actually. She sat on it for a few days before she finally pitched it to me, and I'm glad she spoke up.
That's exactly the instinct we want to see more of. Maya, what does the team need to keep this pace going into next quarter?
2 things. Sign off on hiring one more engineer for the dashboard team and protecting Grace's time so she isn't pulled onto 3 other accounts at once.
Done on both. And Grace, I want to be clear about something. After today, nobody on this floor should think of you as some small cog in a big machine. You just moved a whole account single-handedly.
Thank you, Victor. Honestly, it didn't feel like just me. Daniel walked me through the numbers, and Maya cleared my calendar all week so I could prep.
That's a team that knows how to win. Let's keep it up.
We will. Thank you, Victor.
Let's pause on the phrase, sell ice to a polar bear. To be an extraordinarily persuasive salesperson, so convincing you could sell something to someone who obviously has no need for it at all. It's a modern twist on the older saying, sell ice to Eskimos, swapped in for a more vivid, more clearly absurd image. Both versions make the same point. The buyer already has more than enough of what you're offering, and you talk them into it anyway. It's a compliment about persuasive skill, almost always said about someone else in the construction, could sell ice to a polar bear. Using it about yourself tends to sound like bragging. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. You could sell ice to a polar bear. That salesman could sell ice to a polar bear. He sold 3 umbrellas on a sunny day. If you can convince my grandmother to try sushi, you could sell ice to a polar bear. Let's pause on the phrase, small cog in a big machine, to feel like just one small, replaceable part of a huge organization, as if your individual contribution barely matters. It comes from the industrial age, when factories ran on machines built from many gears, or cogs, of different sizes. The smallest cog looks unimportant next to the giant machine, even though the machine can't run without it. The idiom borrows that image for how a person can feel inside a large company. It usually describes feeling unseen or insignificant, and it's often flipped, the way Victor does here, to reassure someone that they are not just a small cog, they made a real difference. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. Nobody on this floor should think of you as some small cog in a big machine. In his first year at the bank, he felt like a small cog in a big machine, just processing forms all day. It's easy to feel like a small cog in a big machine at a company this size, until your work actually changes an outcome. Great work today. Let's run back through everything we covered. First, sit on an idea. That's holding on to a good idea instead of sharing it, exactly like Grace did with her dashboard idea for 4 days. Then cut corners, doing something the fast, careless way and skipping steps that matter, which Daniel refused to let the team do under deadline pressure. Next, the rat race. That non-stop, competitive grind of daily life, the feeling of running hard and never quite getting ahead, which Maya warned Grace not to let take over her whole life. We also learned weight of the world on your shoulders, feeling like you personally have to carry every problem alone, when really you don't have to. Then sell ice to a polar bears. Being so persuasive, you could convince someone to buy something they clearly don't need. Exactly what Grace did with that skeptical client. And finally, small cog in a big machine's. Feeling like one tiny, replaceable part of a huge company, which Victor made very sure Grace knew she was not after the work she'd just done. 6 idioms. One great day at Tech Global. Nice work. Now let's test your understanding of these 6 idioms. For each question, listen carefully to the situation and choose the correct idiom. You'll have about 10 seconds to think before you answer. Daniel refused to blank on the testing phase, even though the team was behind schedule. The answer is cut corners. Which idiom describes someone so persuasive they could convince anyone to buy something they clearly don't need? The answer is sell ice to a polar bear. I don't want to just blank any longer. I should tell my manager about it today. The answer is sit on an idea. Which idiom describes the tiring, competitive daily grind of running hard but never quite getting ahead? The answer is the rat race. Which idiom means feeling like you personally have to carry every problem alone? The answer is weight of the world on your shoulders. After the big win, Victor made sure Grace knew she wasn't just a blank. Her work had a real impact. The answer is small cog in a big machine. What a day at Tech Global. Grace stopped sitting on her idea, and it turned into the dashboard that saved the whole project. Daniel held the line so nobody cut corners under pressure. Maya reminded Grace that the rat race doesn't have to run her life, and that she doesn't need to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders alone. And in the end, Grace's persuasive pitch, the kind where you could sell ice to a polar bear, proved to Victor that she is anything but a small cog in a big machine. If you take one thing from today, let it be this: speak up early, protect your standards under pressure, and remember, that even on a big team, your work moves the whole machine. Great job today. See you in the next lesson.
Moments in English. Live the moment. Make it yours.